And welcome back, footy fans, to another episode of Donnie's Disposals. I am your host, Coach Donnie Hess here, back with, unfortunately, the last AFL round review. We have finals to talk about. We have a premiere. We have a flag that has been handed out, but we got to walk through all of the finals, the scintillating games that we got to watch to see us crown an AFL premier. And joining me, one of my great fans, a fellow American footy loving fan. We have Gil Griffin joining us. Gil, it is great to see you again, sir.
Hey, Donnie, great to see you too, and hope the year in AFL is was kind to you.
It was a interestingly entertaining, fun year as the Swan supporting Red Hat Donnie. A few bumps in the road that I probably might not have expected, but the thing was, I enjoyed the game of footy, putting the black hat, just coach, neutral Donnie, a fantastic season of football. I think there were so many incredible stories, so many great things. Unfortunately, there were a lot of valleys. Unfortunately, there were mountains and there were valleys in this, and we can discuss that a little bit later on in the year because I may go a little bit, I may be a little bit harsh a little bit later on in this podcast for sure. But let's
What,
hop.
you?
I know, right? I know. Never, coach will never do that for sure. So, all right, sir, let's go through it. Before we go through each game of the finals, really quickly, your thoughts on this year's final series. Let's not give away who's won the Premier. I think most of the people that are listening know who's won the Premiership, but let's talk about it. Thoughts on the final series this year from the first round all the way to the grand final.
Well, one of the things that was disappointing was I found that there was a great lack of suspense. I felt like so many matches were one-sided. The grand final, especially if you watched after the second half.
Hmm.
And it's very interesting because before I came on, we were talking about AFLW a little bit, and one of the things that I wrote about as a column for a footy website in Australia, Footyology, was that I felt AFLW was copping too much criticism for having too many blowout games, and I rebutted that by saying, well, if you look at the last several years of AFL Grand Finals,
Hmm.
they have been nothing but blowouts. And this year was no exception after the second half. And if you look at the finals matches, a lot of it was as the announcers love to say, one-way traffic.
Hmm.
And so I felt at the time, and still do feel this way, that AFLW, and I know we're not totally concentrating on that league, but the double standards that AFLW has to cop compared to AFL. And I think that we're starting to see that in the trade period. There's going to be even more of an imbalance
Hmm.
as you see the finals making teams getting richer and the really struggling clubs continuing to struggle, and where you see more of an Americanization of things like players getting traded and the teams trading them are picking up half of their salaries, as we
Hmm.
have in Major League Baseball and in the NBA and some other leagues. If the AFL really isn't careful, it's really going to go way overboard as far as conforming to other standards and other cultures and other countries. And I also, and I know I'm drifting a little away from here talking about the final series, but one of the things that also concerns me is the upending of another tradition about how the center bounce is now going to be gone. Uh, where is it going to stop? I understand the leagues evolve and I understand that sports evolve, but at a certain point, if you give too much away, you lose your traditions.
Hmm. 100% agree with you. Again, this off season is going to be nuts. I mean, just the little that we've gotten through trade radio just recently is going to make my draft and free agency show just absolutely nuts because I honestly believe like this could have some seismic moves this year, especially with some of the ones like, but I'm going to echo you. Like this was kind of an anticlimactic finals. Really, when it comes to it, I really think there was only one rip-roaring game. And unfortunately, my co-host probably doesn't want to talk about that particular game when it comes to it because of one of the participants in that particular game. But I mean, other than that, really, I every single game had the better side won, and the lower side just did not have what they needed to really be as competitive. And unfortunately, one of the huge things we'll talk about is that our minor premier was probably one of the worst offenders when it comes to it, which I think, sir, is a great transition into the first round of the footies. We're the first round of the footy of the finals this year with the qualifying finals. We'll start off with the first one as the minor premiers drop the first game at home by 24, 79-55. Let's go to the other one, and then we'll cover both of these qualifying finals, and then we'll move on to the elims with the second one at the MCG as Geelong beat the Lions by 38, 112-74. As we said, both qualifying finals really. Collingwood, Geelong were just too good on the day. And how disappointing was it that the minor premiers really did not fire a shot at home?
No, I definitely am familiar with that. When you talk about you're wearing your red hat, and when I wear my purple hat for Fremantle, I know very well what it's like for a club to win a minor premiership and have it amount to nothing, because that's what happened to Fremantle in 2015, 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And so I think the minor premiership stuff is really kind of overrated. It's really what you have to. It's really what you do in the finals. And but I really think Adelaide, of course, squandered such a great opportunity. I mean,
Mhm.
finishing on top of the ladder, but it was all for naught. And when you have that first match at home and you're playing the number 4 seed in a qualifying final, that's when you really have to win. And so that was really surprising to see Adelaide go out like that and then go out in straight sets, as Fremantle did 10 years ago. That I don't know exactly if it was a case of the spirit just being broken at Adelaide, and or overconfidence maybe. But that was it's really hard to think of a successful season when you're the minor primer and you go out in straight sets like that.
Yeah.
Uh, that really that's got to be a driver for them next year to really fix what's going on. But Adelaide came from a long way from last year to this year to get to this point, so it has to really end in disappointment for them.
Yeah, from 15 to first, there's I mean, it really depends on what camp you sit in. I've seen some people that are saying, well, 15 to first, that's an impressive thing. This can't be a negative season. Then people go, well, they won the minor premiership. They would have basically gotten a home field advantage all the way up until the MCG for the grand final. Did they squander that? A little bit. I will talk about it really quickly, but I don't want to go into the minutia of it. Did the Isaac Rankin suspension really kind of throw this group off? I don't know. I didn't think Isaac Rankin would have changed this result the way it was. The Crows looked listless in this first game against Collingwood again. I think Collingwood came out with it with a burr in their bonnet, shall we say. In this one, I'm not sure Isaac Rankin would have changed this result, honestly. So I'm not in that camp that thinks Isaac Rankin would have changed this game. No, I don't think so. The way Collingwood was playing in this game, Isaac Rankin might have brought it to where maybe it was a 3 goal instead of a 4 goal margin. But I don't know if Isaac Rankin's dragging them from the doldrums that they were for good portions of this particular game and dragging them over the line. I just don't see it. And then the Cats were just too good. I had never seen the Lions. I hadn't seen the Lions be that way they were in that particular qualifying final in this
You know,
particular game. I did not see that coming. I thought this would be another hugely competitive game. These two had played some absolute crackers. Was not expecting it. We'll see later on in the year how that result would come back. It to be interesting on that one. So let's talk about the two elimination finals. We'll go through each. We'll
do we,
go
do we
through.
really have to?
We'll try to go quickly. We'll try to pull the band-aid off as fast as we possibly can. I'm sorry, Gil. So, all right, we'll start off in NG Stadium in a game that honestly I could not keep track of this game because it was so nuts because so many swings and roundabouts in it. But the Hawks get a 19-point win up in NG Stadium up in Sydney over the Giants, 107-88. And then unfortunately, we'll rip the band-aid off quickly as unfortunately the Gold Coast Suns in their finals debut get a 1 point win out in Optus Stadium over the Dockers, 80-79. I mean, I know this isn't easy for purple hat Gill here, but I mean you got to tip your cap to David Swallow because he found a way to get it done. And crazy enough, the behind probably was the better result for Gold Coast than the goal. in some situations, a goal might have made it easier for them to at least get a chance to get it to extra time.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I also had a real big objection to Brennan Cox being called for or the umpire pinging Brennan Cox at the end of that match.
Mhm.
I felt like he had successfully dislodged the ball. I thought it could have been incorrect disposal, but the umpire didn't see it that way. But it also just showed how vulnerable Josh Tracy was when he went back in defense, and that he's a great offensive player, but he's not primarily a defender. And that had he went back to keep up with Mac Andrew, and you have to give the Suns credit there because they were able to come back after being run down, and two kicks made the difference there. But for the Dockers, so many wasted opportunities, and unfortunately for those of us who are partial to the purple, all Australian summer and all U.S. winter, I think one of the things we're going to think about is Michael Frederick running into an open goal and deciding to go the dribble rather than a drop punt.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, that was just inexplicable. But the other thing that happens, I think that Fremantle fans have to acknowledge is just being outcoached. I mean, you've got Dimma, who's won three flags, and that's not by accident. And he went into that match and he really prepared his team very well, and they were not nervous at all. The big stage did not frighten them. They went out and they played a fantastic match. They really did. And at the end of the match, well, as painful as it is, the best side on the day won, and it came down to executing the little things. And so you have to give them credit. It was a grandstand finish by Fremantle, and they when they had an opportunity to get a shutdown and prevent the go ahead goal as it were. They didn't do that. Mac Andrew came out of nowhere to take an uncontested mark on his chest,
Yep.
and and it's just footy, like baseball, as we've talked about, can be such a cruel game where one thing, one thing going wrong, or one thing not the ball not bouncing in a way that you want it to, or maybe you're a millisecond late with a tackle, or one fist that doesn't fly for a spoil can make all the difference in who goes home and who advances to the next round. So that was really something there. But I think Damian Hardwick, because he's had all that experience with winning flags before, just had a really good game plan, and it worked out. I won't say to perfection, because if it were to perfection, then I think the Suns would have won by more. But at least one thing I can say about this, while I'm wearing my purple hat, at least we've got the better jumper, because you can't see anything on that Suns jumper. Is that not the worst jumper of all time?
It's
How does
the
how does that?
it's
Who approves that? You can't even see what's on the front of the jumper. Christian Petrarca next year, you're not going to be able you won't know who he's playing for.
you know,
But anyway, I
it's
digress.
it's from a distance, it's the blandest looking jumper ever.
But you can't even see what's on it,
I
Donnie. You can't
exactly
see it.
like you have to make the Suns logo their gold instead of red, or
But
even
here's the other
yeah.
thing. Do they not have anybody that could test it on a camera, like an
Mhm.
AFL camera with the lights on, and see, hey, how would this look on television? Can we actually see who this team is? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, what's really sad is probably one of the best-selling jumpers this entire season was their third one that was only supposed to be for gather round was their pink jumpers, and that was probably one of the best-selling jumpers this entire year. And then people lost their minds when they wore it again. So I don't know. It was one of those. It just like I said, from a distance, it's the blandest looking jumper because you have no idea what the logo. You can't see the logo unless you look at it. So it's I don't know. But again, plaudits to the
It looks like
Suns.
it's been through the wash and faded completely, is what it looks like.
I'm not going to disagree with you on that one. No, Fremantle did everything they could. I mean, the Luke Jackson, Mark Lay to get the goal to take the lead originally was absolutely insane. again, it just got haywire, and I don't know if there was just some miscommunication or what. But like I said, the craziest part was the fact that David Swallow, the last remaining original son, was the one that got the winner. So it was almost because I know there were some people when Swallow had the turnover that led to the Jackson goal, or people like, did Dimma fall for the kind of the fairy tale selection a little bit, like they come like he complained earlier in the year when it came to Port Adelaide's last game of the season, complaining that did they get caught up in the emotion a little bit. So I don't know. It was just an
Well,
interest.
that's tough because if you then talk about sentimentality and you look at Nat Fife
Yep.
and Fife playing the sub role, well, a big-bodied midfielder really could have helped Fremantle a
Hmm.
lot more in that match because you look at Matt Rowell,
Yep.
who eventually won the Brownlow, and he cut Fremantle to shreds. That was not even that was pure domination, and I don't really know if Fife's presence more would have helped, but I would have had to have thought that if he had played more of the second half, then that could have possibly made a difference.
Hmm.
We'll never know.
Yep. Well, unfortunately, we'll never know. And again, congratulations to Fifey on an incredible career. Again, we will miss seeing him playing football, but again, we wish him all the best in retirement on that. Let's move on to the semifinals, where, as we've kind of already said, unfortunately, the minor premiers go out in straight sets as Hawthorn go to Adelaide and get a 101 to 67, a 34-point win for the Hawks, and then like copy paste the other semifinal, almost a mirror image, as the Brisbane Lions in the first ever Q Clash final, as the Lions smash the Suns at the Gabba 147. I mean, this is a copy paste. Hawks, Lions, good. Crows, Suns, bad.
Yeah, and the other thing that's really interesting about this, I wanted to come back and talk a little bit about the qualifying finals because it's really hard, I think, for some teams to know how to approach it,
Mhm.
whether they approach it as a training run, whether they approach it as, a balls to the wall, have to win kind of thing to get to a clear path to the preliminary final. And it can lead to some teams, I think, being really overconfident and other clubs not taking it seriously enough. And so I don't know how Adelaide saw that first match against Collingwood that would, as you said, that they look listless, and to come out and play even more listlessly. And
Mhm.
then that maybe that's something about a team going from number 15 to number one, because you really have to wonder if they haven't been in that spot where they've been playing at a high intensity as Collingwood had, what kind of effect that had on them. And Hawthorn really was intense in both of its matches, and they're coming off that adrenaline rush, overtaking GWS and holding
Mhm.
on against GWS to win that one. That I think you can't underestimate momentum. And Hawthorn had a lot of momentum. And when I think about momentum, I go back to the year that the Bulldogs won the Premiership, and the
Yep.
fact that they came from outside the top four, and they just played with their hair on fire the whole final series, and they carried one match into the next, into the next, into the next, and the next thing you know, you're looking up and they're premiers. So I think momentum has a lot to do with it. Gold Coast certainly was coming off a situation with a lot of momentum,
Mhm.
but in playing Brisbane, they were running up against a brick wall, and Brisbane had been massively shut down by Geelong the previous round. So it's tough. It's really tough to see about what the best path is to go all the way. And Gold Coast just really played as if they just did not have a chance against Brisbane.
Well, I think it was kind of one of those where it was like you also had the fact that Brisbane was kind of burning a little bit because the last time they played the Q Clash was at People's First, and Gold Coast absolutely bent Brisbane over their knee and spanked them like a disobeying child. Like there was there
With or
was
without a
some
belt.
there was some animosity to that. So I kind of went into that game going like, how does Brisbane Lion respond from kind of getting pantsed by Geelong at the MCG, but they were going home, and Lockie Neal was coming back from the injury. And so a lot of people, there was a lot of questions. How are they going to respond? And again, the Ashcroft brothers were absolutely fantastic. Again, Brisbane seems like whenever they needed somebody to step up, somebody stepped up, and that I think Harris Andrews again was fantastic in this particular final series. Just I don't know. And then with the Crows and the Hawks, like I just kind of felt like the Crows, again, the suspension Isaac Rankin really took the air out of the balloon. And I think they spent so much time complaining about the suspension that it was almost like they weren't ready for the finals at all. They got through the first final, and I think a lot of people were expecting, okay, the Crows are going to bounce back. They're going to bounce. They have the chance to beat the Hawks. They've got the weapons to be able to do it. Taylor Walker had a pretty good game against Collingwood. Unfortunately, he was the only one of the forwards that really did. Darcy Fogarty seemed to be out at sea, and Riley Philthorpe couldn't catch a cold in the winter time. And then the sad part about it was is the game against the Hawks, it was kind of the same thing. It was like their forwards could not remember how to do their job. And the midfield, unfortunately, this was one of the few times Jordan Dawson was a ghost. I don't know what Jordan Dawson was doing in this game against the Hawks, but I mean, Jai Newcomb absolutely bossed the midfield in this particular game. He was absolutely, undeniably the best midfielder in this game. There was nobody stopping him. Nobody could tackle him. Nobody could bring him down, and he picked it apart. You had Nick Watson, you had Luke Bruce, you had Mario Chol, the forwards for the Hawks tore that the Adelaide Crows defense apart. And this had been a very good Crows defense for most of the season. I think they had been an unsung group when it comes to it. Everybody was getting all of the love to the midfield and Jordan Dawson and Isaac Rankin and Taylor Walker. I think the Crows defense was probably one of the reasons they won so many of those games because they tightened up when they needed to. But unfortunately, in this finals, they got exposed a little bit because they constantly were playing to defense because Jai Newcomb was bossing the center midfield. So the Crows go home, first time a minor premier in like 43 years. It was not a record that I think the Crows, but I will say this. If the Crows have a decent off season, I think they'll be back there. I just think they got a little bit of the reality of this is finals footy. This is the way you have to play. I think they'll learn from it. The biggest question will be in their free agency period will be is do they bulk up their midfield because that's really what really got exposed in this particular final series. Jordan Dawson is a great midfielder, but he's not one of those game changer takeover midfielders. He's one of those he makes impacts when he does. Sometimes he can take over a game, but it's not a consistent trade of Jordan Dawson. Again, this is no diss on Jordan Dawson at all, Crows fans. Don't take it like that. I love the kid, think the kid's fantastic, but he has not shown that ability to overtake game and then a game and then a game and then a game. He'll do it once and then he'll have 3 games where he doesn't and then he'll do it. And then there's about 4 games where he doesn't. He needs to be more consistent as being that guy that goes, this is my game and does it. Like a Jai Newcomb, like a Nick Dacos, like a Lockie Neal, like a Matty Rowell, one of those guys that you just know, like when he flips that switch, it's over. It's his game now. And that's what I want to see Jordan Dawson work on in this offseason is becoming that man in the midfield because we know Isaac Rankin can do it, but unfortunately he was unavailable. So we won't
Well,
discuss. We'll just,
one of the things you hit on, Donnie, I think is the beauty of footy and and the beauty of all professional sports is that it's not an exact science,
yep.
and that it's unpredictable, and that it's mercurial. And one of the things that I'm very fond of saying when people look at analytics and when they look at statistics, which I'm very glad that you're not really looking at here, is that footy, just like any other sport, is not played on paper; it's played on grass.
Hmm.
And from week to week, we don't know what's in athletes' heads. We don't know the training. We don't know any of that stuff unless we are in the rooms with them and off the pitch with them too. And there's so many things. There's so many factors that we just don't know. And these athletes are not chess pieces,
Okay.
and so we don't know what's in Jordan's head, uh, about why he hasn't been able to dominate certain games. We don't know with people who think that they have to try and do too much when the
Hmm.
game is on the line. And it's really interesting what you said too about taking over a game, because footy is one of those too, as you well know, where so much of it is the bounce of the ball, and action can be happening in another part of the playing field. Not like basketball, where you have a
Hmm.
much shorter space to operate in, where Michael Jordan could take over a game or something like that. With baseball, someone has to wait their turn most of the time if it's coming to the plate. And your midfields or your on ballers are around all the time, and they can definitely impact something. But no one is thinking. I think we all take for granted how strenuous it is on these athletes to run out 4 quarters.
Hmm.
Your legs have got to be aching and tired and beyond anything that we can comprehend. So I think that's another thing to really think about too,
Hmm.
and also with the midfielders and with Adelaide and its off season. Um, I think that one of the things that they have to look for is some experienced heads and a strong supporting cast. That's going to definitely, if they're able to do well in that, then that can really help them.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think they bolstered their depth a lot. I think Neil Bullen, Peatling, and Isaac Cumming, I think were fantastic signings, and you could see they made huge impacts, but they weren't the takeover player. They weren't that guy. Like it'd be fascinating to see is does Adelaide make a play for a Clayton Oliver? I mean, unfortunately, as we record here, it's just come out that Christian Petrarca has named the club he wants to go to, and it is Gold Coast, which I think will be fascinating to see how that trade turns out. What type of pieces will Melbourne try to get in return on that? Like I said, and Clayton Oliver has been told to seek other places, so as their defender Stephen May. So it'd be interesting, but can they get that big body midfielder that can kind of just get in, get the football out, and get it to an Isaac Rankin, a Josh Rochelle, a Jordan Dawson on the run? It'd be fascinating to see that Crows team again. I think the building blocks are there. There's just a couple of few pieces that they're looking for in the midfield, just that see ball, get ball, Libba type of player like with the Western Bulldogs, somebody like that is really what they need because I think they've got the pieces. They've got the pieces to be a Premiership side. It's they've just got to put just a few little adaptations into it, just a little bit. So I think the Crows could be quite a dangerous side next
They
season.
could be, and it's
Yep.
funny too when you mention the Demons. I mean, the Demons are kind of turning into footy's answer to the Minnesota Twins,
Hmm.
getting rid of absolutely everybody, and that's crazy. I mean, to think that this core. Uh, I still think of the Demons when they won I like to call it the COVID Premiership
Hmm.
At Optus Stadium. But you talk about a fire sale. I mean, everybody who's anybody is leaving that team.
Mark Scott's the only one that's staying around.
Yeah, yeah,
It
and well,
literally is.
and
It's
and Kazi
Petrarca
Pickett,
sounds like he's on his way out. They've told May and they've told Oliver they want out. Judd McVee's
yeah,
already said he wants a trade out of there.
and
The
Kazi
good,
Pickett stays. The
well,
one who was really rumored to be leaving
yeah.
last year, he's the one who stays. Isn't
Well,
that crazy?
they've still got some good pieces. I mean, if Lever stays, Lever's still pretty solid. Lever's still pretty solid back there. I like River. I like Rivers. I like some of their youngsters. I want to see more consistency from a Bailey Fritsch. I really want to see Jacob Van Rooyen step up to what I think a lot of people have seen flashes of. I just want to see a little bit more consistency with that. So we can talk a little bit more about. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the free agency period. Let's go back to the finals. Let's get to the preliminary finals. Here we go. 4 teams to 2 teams to see who plays in the grand final. We start off the old rivals take on each other, and the Cats take their rivals to school with a 30-point win, 115-85 at the MCG. And then to add to it, the Brisbane Lions come down from the GABA and shock the Pies at the MCG with a 29-point win, 171. Cats Lions into the grand final. But the one thing I got to say though is the MCG, how marvelous, 95,000 at both preliminary finals. Incredible for footy to nearly see both games completely sold out.
Yeah, it really is. And you and I have been to the MCG, and we know about how fantastic it is to be there. I'm not one of those people that believes that tradition ought to be thrown out the window. I like the idea of to win the cup, you've got to go to the home of footy. You've got to go to the MCG. I don't believe that it should be rotated or that whoever is the highest ranked side ought to be able to have home field advantage. I really think it ought to stay at the G. That's where the tradition, that's the cultural hearth of
Mhm.
footy, and you have to come and you have to earn it. Um, I really like that because that if your team wins a flag, that is some straight up medieval stuff, warrior stuff. You went, you came, you saw, you conquered.
Mhm.
And I believe it ought to stay like that. So yeah, you're right. It's fantastic to see that, and I definitely don't have a Victorian bias, but that's where the game originated,
Mhm.
and I think it really should maintain that tradition. And Brisbane just in their preliminary final match showed that they weren't intimidated by it, that they were going to go in, and they were going to take down the club that has the biggest membership in the AFL, and that they weren't going to be phased by it, and they just poured it on, and they ran away with they won going away.
Mhm.
Um, and Geelong kind of uses the MCG as a second home, and against the young Hawthorn side, I really could see that one coming, that Geelong was going to win this one. So I think the two teams that ended up in the grand final were the most deserving. I know it's got to be a bitter disappointment to Collingwood fans. After they have had a really magnificent run over the years, but Brisbane showed it was their time.
Yep. No, 100% with you. I think with Collingwood a little bit, like I 100% agree with you. Like going into the finals, Geelong and Brisbane were two of the hottest teams going into the finals. Collingwood kind of stumbled into the top four, shall we say. There was a lot of internal anguish. There was injury issue. I know Jordan De Goey just could not seem to get his body right, and it seemed like they got him cherry right for their finals, and he played really, really well in the finals games that he played in. But man, Brisbane, that young core, the Ashcroft brothers, McCluggage, oh my gosh, there's so many great performances on that, and to see the youngsters play well. Man, just this Brisbane Lions team was so much fun to watch. But I want to give credit to the Cats too, because that Hawks team, they were coming in breathing fire as well as they had played in both of those road game finals, getting both wins, coming back to the MCG. Hawks Nation was up and about, and the Cats kind of put the fire out really quickly and just kind of made sure that the Cats knew that the Hawks knew it was the Cats' day. It was a fantastic game again. I think the Hawks are building. I thought they've together some really good sides. They're going to be quite the dangerous side this year if they could pick up some of the pieces. I know James Warple just signed a contract with Geelong, but the Hawks can't match it. So it'll be fascinating to see how that goes. So that gets us to a grand final. Let's go to the grand final day. And as you kind of said in your preamble, for the first two and probably 10 minutes of this game, this was a cracking final. Back and forth. Lions take the lead. Cats take the lead. Lions take it back. Cats get it back. Back and forth. And all of a sudden, it was like the Lions went, we ain't doing this anymore, and absolutely went beast mode on the Cats, went nuts in the final quarter, and pulls it out for a 122-75, a 47-point win for the Lions. Back to back premiers. Congratulations, Brisbane. But man, as a neutral, this was a disappointing final because the first two and a half quarter, if we could just stop at like the 10-minute mark of the third quarter, because and up till that point, it was a cracking final. Both teams getting after it, great pressure, great tackling, some fantastic goals. I know Charlie Cameron had that one from the boundary and then did the little Snoop Dogg dance after, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. And then hearing Country Road over the intercom was I thought was a nice little fun touch for them doing the goal songs. But man, Brisbane just absolutely went in fuego in the second half of that third quarter, and the Cats just could not put the fire out.
Yeah, it's funny because most of the time it's the third term that's the Premiership quarter,
Yep.
but this time Brisbane used the fourth quarter as the Premiership quarter. My feelings about Americanization aside, with the singing of a John Denver song in the '70s in Australia for an Indigenous player lighting it up. I mean, hey, whatever floats his boat. Good on Charlie Cameron. It's well deserved, and all of that stuff. Um, but yeah, I mean, this was a pretty good match until the third quarter began, or as you said, the 10-minute mark. I kind of like the very beginning where it was really tough for either
Hmm.
side to kick a goal. Um, that's kind of what I like. I mean, at the very beginning, where it's kind of like a heavyweight boxing match,
Hmm.
and there's a lot of jabbing and a lot of feeling each other out and all that kind of stuff, and then the game, as the announcers say, really opens up later. Um, but yeah, I mean, Brisbane just absolutely just they were like a runaway freight train that just could not be stopped. And I have to just think there can't be a worse feeling in footy to if you're on the Geelong side when you can't stop the runaway train. You
Mhm.
know that you know early in a term or relatively early in a term you're not winning it, and it's the biggest match of the year. That is, I can't imagine a more deflating feeling than that. I really can't. And I really think about the last few grand finals where in the last quarter or several minutes of the last quarter, it's really the winning side just toying with the other one.
Mhm.
Uh, when the smiles come out, you can see all the stress melt away. And there was that big talk from the Lions about when Chris Fagan was smiling at that one point. Well, then you knew you had it in the bag and you knew
Yep.
it was over. Um, so yeah, I mean, it was the Lions were absolutely relentless, and it's well deserved.
Yep.
They really they came through, and Lockie Neal had an impact coming off as a sub there. Speaking of another Docker or one time Docker
Mhm.
in Lockie Neal, well, hats off to the Lions. They earned it, they deserve it, and they're not primers by accident.
Yep. No, 100%. Again, huge congratulations to the Brisbane Lions. Again, back to back premiers. We will see how they go. So we will end this season, but let's review a little bit of the end of the year. As I do with most of my review shows, the last one of the year, we talk a little bit of the season as a whole with a few categories. We will start off with the best and fairest, the Brownlow Medal, and this year's recipient was the Gold Coast Matty Rowell. I have to say this was a fascinating count. Again, you kind of feel for Nick Dacos a little bit because the kid has done everything he can and has gotten so many votes for such a young man, but cannot pull a trick to win this particular medal. But again, I think Matty Rowell a well deserved. But again, you're seeing so many of these times where I kind of love the Brownlow medal because as much as everybody says it's predictable, it can have some wild results, especially considering I have to go to it, and we can talk about it a little bit later too, is the result from the round 20 match between St. Kilda and Melbourne, where I think everybody assumed Messiah was going to get the 3 votes because of not only the game tire, but then the game winner, also having 30 possessions, kicking 3 goals in that particular game, and he gets 2 votes.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. So yeah, that is unpredictable. But I want to congratulate Matty Rowell too,
Yep.
especially
Yep.
when he missed an entire year earlier in his career due to
Yep.
injury. And I remember one thing stuck with me that when he was hurt, that he would be in that Gold Coast golf shirt,
Hmm.
and this time you could actually see the logo on it. And he was down on the he was down on the field the whole time, and he was basically functioning as an extra coach.
Hmm.
And he was in the coach's box a few times. And I'm thinking, this really young guy must have such a great footy brain that he's in there absorbing everything and imparting it to his younger teammates. And that's rare. It's almost like he's got a 40-year-old brain on an early 20s body.
Hmm. Yep.
He just had an absolutely marvelous year, and it's well deserved.
Hmm.
And I think he showed his class in that elimination final. And he was someone that helped get Gold Coast as far as it got. And
Yep.
so I'm happy for him, and truly happy for Gold Coast and having its first ever Brownlow winner. The AFL has fought tooth and nail to try and establish a beachhead in the Gold Coast,
Hmm.
and hopefully next season it'll start showing in attendance figures and those kinds of things.
Yep.
I really hope it will, because this has just been a long time coming in to try and establish a beachhead in a rugby state.
Yep. No.
So
One
yeah.
hundred, 100% again. All plaudits, Matty Rowell, definitely well deserved. I didn't want to. I know I brought up Nick Dacos, but again, I don't want to take away. Matty Rowell was sensational this year. I know him and Noah Anderson. I was worried they were going to take votes off of each other. So a little bit like what happens with Bont with all of his comrades on his team is like sometimes that's what really gets me a little bit is I don't know if Bont will ever win a Brownlow because he's got so many good teammates around him that take votes off of him. So we'll have to see how that goes. But again, huge congratulations to Matty Rowell. So I want to go with this. One of the only negative questions that I have in my season review. What was your season for the AFL? What was your biggest disappointment?
I think the biggest disappointment for me was the gap between the haves and the have-nots
Yep.
as far as wins on the ladder. We are really starting to see a very big imbalance. Um, and it's just interesting that it took a lot of wins to get into the finals this year.
Hmm.
It really did. But I think the disparity you're seeing between the top eight and the 10 that didn't make the top eight is really it's growing, and I think is only going to continue to get bigger. I think there are always complaints with umpiring decisions and interpretations of the rules. I think there needs to be more consistency on that, and fans have been screaming for it for years, but it doesn't seem like we're getting any closer to that. But for once, it didn't seem like there were some rule changes mid-season, as we've seen. Um, I think so. I think that's really something to think about. And it's also, and even though I am the farthest person to have a Victorian bias, it's not good for the game when some of the most struggling sides are Victorian teams. You take a look at Essendon. What a disaster Essendon turned out to be this year. That's not good. Carlton was a major disappointment. You can't have your foundational. And I'm not saying the AFL ought to do something to right the ship here in terms of those two clubs, but those are two foundational clubs that need to be better and need to be more competitive and need to get
Hmm.
their act together. The other thing that I think is a little bit of a disappointment, and I'm really not just saying this because they're a rival team to Fremantle, but suddenly to have the AFL reaching out to West Coast to try and prop them up a little bit after that season,
Hmm.
I mean that's not exactly equitable.
Yep.
And I think sometimes that when you have clubs that are really struggling, because if I were to look at that one situation out west, and I look at what happened to Fremantle after 2015 and all those struggles from 2016 all the way up until 2022, the AFL did not do anything to lift a finger to help struggling clubs there. So why
Hmm.
now with West Coast with the enhanced draft packaging and everything else? This is not a club that's been starved of success.
Yeah, and it's one of the richest clubs. One of the richest clubs too has a premiership within the last 10 years, and is getting assistance. And as I've said a few times on the podcast, West Coast were the purveyors of their own downfall. Their list management, and I hate to say it too, but I'm going to lump this also in as another team down there. Is North Melbourne was kind of the same way. Like their list management is the reason that they are in the situation that they are in. They have caused their own issue. This isn't one of those where it's oh shucks type of thing where like kids just weren't playing. No, their list management has been atrocious. Let's just safe to say it. West Coast held on to too many of their veterans too long, thinking they were still premiership players. They were past their premiership primes. They were done. They should have moved on from him. They didn't. They make the Tim Kelly trade, which I think they're still paying for because they have no depth of youngster behind the one big time behind Harley Reid. Other than that, they really don't have great young players because so many of first round draft picks went to Geelong to get Tim Kelly in. And all due respect to Tim Kelly, ever since he's gotten into the West Coast colors, he has been less than worth the trade value that he has.
Yeah, of
North
course.
Melbourne was the same thing. The one year that they dropped Boomer Harvey, Petrie, Del Santo, and one. Ever since that list drop, and they've dropped those four veterans, they have
It's the
and
same
have
thing if you
cratered.
look at Fremantle and its list management. I
Yep.
mean, the Lockie Neal trade, and importing Jesse Hogan and Rory Lobb a few years ago.
Yep.
Well, the team has really suffered since then. I think fans would agree with me that a lot of Fremantle fans are still regretting the Lockie Neal trade.
Yep.
Um, that never ended up working out, and there are consequences. There
Hmm.
there are consequences when you're too sentimental about guys on your list
Yep.
who have played past their prime and are hanging on, and they've been great soldiers and servants for the club, but probably are taking away spots from younger players to develop or to step into their own
Hmm.
and excel. And it's one of those things where every club has to take chances and has to try and make the right decisions on that. So, what's the lesson here? The lesson here is that some clubs who are making mistakes with list management, they get rewarded from the
Yep.
league or are allowed to fail, um, and other clubs aren't. I mean, that's that is about as inequitable as it gets.
Yep. And the league is already inequitable as it is. And I don't think they'll ever fix it because the one ways, some of the ways to fix it, I don't know if the league will ever do it. Like, let's just be 100% honest. The league will always have a Victorian, the league will always kind of seem like it has a Victorian bias purely on the fact that you have 10 teams within the Victorian borders and 8 teams out. Now, when Tasmanian comes in, it's going to kind of balance it a little bit with 19. Then the $1 million question will be is will they get a 20th? Where will it be? How long will it take to get them there? I know the consensus is Alice Springs, Northern Territory, which would be fantastic, but are they big enough to sustain an AFL club? That would be the biggest thing there. But I'm for me, I've always said it is that they told the West Coast it's okay if you suck at your job because you're so bad, we're going to help you out. And I think
Yeah, failing
that's
upward.
that's the very frustrating thing. And I know St. Kilda has had a little bit. And again, Saints, I'm not trying to attack you here on this, but your chairman so many times is complaining about, well, the academy's this and father son's that. All due respect, St. Kilda, most of your problems are your own problems because you bring in high money signatures and they don't work. That's on you. That's not on an academy player.
And let's not
That's not
forget when
on.
they opened their training base at Seaford, which
Yep.
is my God, you talk about out in the hinterlands.
Yep.
I went down
We
there
thought
once.
Casey was bad.
Oh my goodness, yes, Seaford was so far away.
Exactly.
I
So
remember when I went there, having to spend an hour and a half on public transit to get out there.
exactly.
It was really something. So they spent a lot of money on that,
Yep. So
and yeah, it's interesting when that happens. And when you're talking about equity, I think one of the things that the league really needs to investigate, and this has been talked about before.
mhm.
What if you had a fixture where everybody played everybody once? That's it. And then have something where you have either a lottery system to determine the last four games, or maybe play one fewer game in the lead up to the start of the season. I like gather round. I think that's a
Yep.
really good idea.
I
But I
agree.
really like the idea of everybody playing everybody once, and then maybe what you do is maybe with that second or the extra match, maybe then you have a rivalry round where you have
Mhm.
things like the Derby, you have traditional rivalries, the Q Clash,
Yep.
the Showdown, and other kinds of things. Maybe that's
Yep.
the way to go.
Well, catch me once we get done with this podcast. I will tell you my utopian idea. I've said it on the podcast so many times. I know people that are listening are probably going to get annoyed, so I don't want to do it again. But I've come up with what I consider the utopian idea that would be perfect, not only for the men's, because I know the men's players complain there's too many games, and would then balance out to the point where the women's would be the same amount of games. So I'll tell you after this podcast. I don't want to make people go through it. So for me, my biggest disappointment, and maybe this is a little bit of uh, sentimentality here, but for me, my biggest disappointment was Kenny Hinckley's going away season and how it literally went off the rails early. And I love Kenny Hinckley. I think he's a character. I truly, truly appreciate how he coaches. And I think this year he kind of went into it with bugger it. I don't care. I'm just going to finish this year off. But unfortunately, some of these results that Port Adelaide served up to us this year was rather disappointing because as much as I keep hearing so many of these players say, we love Kenny, we want to play for Kenny, we want to do this for Kenny. All due respect, y'all didn't do it for Kenny this year. I mean, there were so many times, there were too many games where they lost by 40 points plus. I was extremely disappointed on how Port Adelaide handled this. I know they dealt with injury. I know they dealt with some moves and things like that. But the coach in waiting with Nick Carr and then unfortunately the obsession with the Victorian media of every time Kenny Hinkley lost a game by 30 or more, well, is Kenny going to walk away and Carr going to take over halfway, or are they going to ramp it up? I said from the beginning at the start of the year, Kenny Hinkley is a stubborn stinker. He's going to stay in there unless Port fires him, and Port doesn't want to fire him because then it kind of proves the fans that don't want him there anymore right. And I don't think Kashi is a person that likes to accept that he's wrong. So I kind of knew the entire season Kenny's going to go through the entire year, no matter what happens. Like, let's
I'm
just
gonna
be
miss the soap opera. Kachi and I mean,
exactly,
seriously,
exactly,
Kachi and
exactly.
Ken Hinckley, that was a fun soap opera to keep track of.
Oh yeah, just
It really was. I mean, I have to admit, I kind of have a soft spot for Port supporters because I
I do
mean,
too. Yeah.
I totally get that. They're as being a Fremantle Dockers fan and being a New York Mets fan, I understand about how you're the new kid on the block in your city. You're kind of overshadowed by the other one to an extent.
Hmm.
And you've got that really scrappy mentality. You don't want to be seen as little sibling
Hmm.
and all of that. So, some people rip this, but I love the whole never tear us apart thing at the beginning of
I
matches.
do
And
too. I think it's
yeah, I
fantastic.
mean, yeah, that's great. It's great. And I love the fact that they are so amped up to play showdowns and when they're not really competitive, that is their grand final. I still have, the memories of Chad Wingard taking that mark late in that match in one of the showdowns
Hmm.
and kicking the winning score. And yeah, I mean, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but Port fans are special.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, they are a
They're
really
they're a
interesting
rare they're a
breed.
rare breed. My Port supporters that I know, and I go back and forth with several of them. They are some salt of the earth people. They get after it. They've got some mongrel in them. Absolutely love it. And I still say this. I think the most competitive. I think honestly right now the most competitive series in the AFL is the showdown. I think
Oh, no doubt.
Adelaide Port Adelaide, in my opinion, every year should be the Friday night footy match. Clean air, nobody else. Let these two teams have a crack at each other because the fan bases do not like each other. The fan bases do not want to be after it. The teams don't like each other. The only thing that I found fascinating was I think the coaches got along pretty well. I think Nixie and Kenny Hinkley got along pretty well. The teams, man, they had some mongrel when they got after it. I absolutely love the showdowns. For me, I would pay the league. Put the showdowns on Friday nights. I understand that you have the history of Collingwood Carlton. You have the reverence of Hawthorne and Geelong. But I'm sorry. Port Adelaide, Adelaide, I know every year, no matter where they're sitting on the ladder, these two are going to have a crack at each other, and it's going to be fantastic to watch every year. So, no, I'm 100% with you. So, let's go to biggest surprise. What's something that surprised you this season? And Gil, I hope you don't mind. Can I go first on this,
Of
please?
course, go ahead, go
Okay.
for it.
My biggest surprise is how much the AFL buggered up this season. Damn it. I'm going to go off, pull my shelf box, put it underneath me. AFL, pull your heads in. Okay. You surprised me with I will I will stop myself. How crap you were this year on so many things. Every time they could find a way to screw something up, they found a way. I have never in my life seen a group that finds a way to screw up something if they would just stop talking, let stuff play out, and do it when you actually know the referee gate. Holy crap, what are you doing? The Fremantle Lockie Schultz situation. What are you doing? Shut up. You literally could not find a way to trip over your feet. Again, it was like the meme with somebody standing in the middle of six ladders, and every step that they took, they hit a ladder and it smacked them in the face. The Isaac Rankin suspension. Holy crap, what are you doing? Holy crap, what are you doing? All you did was open up so many cans of worms in so many situations, and it really did not help you at all. I will continue to say it. AFL House continues to find a way to make every way to make AFLW the little stepchild that never should be successful. I'm going to say it. I know some people don't like it, but I'm going to say it. AFL House has done everything they can to be sure that AFLW cannot succeed the way it possibly can. Too many games at crap times, too many venues that are not big enough for the metrics that you want for these girls to get more games. It's very, very frustrating. My biggest surprise this year, how much AFL House has sucked this year. Sorry, go on ahead.
No, no, not at all. Those are all really valid points. I'll definitely agree with you on the AFLW part. I really think it's very incongruous, all the things that it says in support of AFLW, but it doesn't quite go all the way.
Hmm.
Uh, that's going to be something that's going to be interesting to figure out. But one of the things I want to come back to is just talking about the Victorian sides, because seven out of the bottom 10 spots, 7 out of the bottom 10 were Victorian teams.
Hmm.
You know, um, and I'm not saying the AFL ought to do anything about this. It shouldn't, but that's not a good look. That's not a good look for the league. And again, I am not proposing any way to do anything to beef up those teams. But I think you said it, Donnie, when you're talking about things like list management and other kinds of issues that have really plagued those teams. Um, so that was a surprise to see so many of those teams um, fall and be on the bottom. As far as another thing, boy, how much worse could it have been if you were an Essendon fan this year?
Hmm.
And the other thing is too with the Demons. I mean, we've talked about the mass exodus that's going to happen there. Um, those things are not in any way good for the league. Matty Rowell winning the Brownlow and coming from the clouds, I think, was a really nice surprise.
Hmm.
It was
I
good to
agree.
see them. It's good for the league that the Gold Coast finally got into the finals. Uh, Good on them for what they achieved this year. Um, so those things are really good. I think that the other thing that was, and I don't want to say it's a surprise so much, but if you're looking at player movement, and now you've got Jamara Ugle-Hagan thinking about going to Gold Coast, which is really kind of an interesting thing. You've already got Petrarca saying he wants to go there. But I have to tell you something. I think that this has got to be one of the first years that I have not listened to AFL trade radio and listened to it religiously. Because a lot of it has to do with where your team is and what
Hmm.
it wants
Yep.
to do and what it wants to import. But back in the day, you couldn't tear me away from AFL trade radio. I would listen all day, all the shows, and I would have all this suspense and feeling about, well, who's going to get moved and all this other stuff. The one thing I think that is a minor thing, but on the AFL's website that I get frustrated by is whenever you want to read information on who might be moving. No, they make you watch a video. I don't want
Hmm.
to watch a video. I want to read it. I don't need to spend time hearing pundits, and no disrespect to the pundits,
Hmm.
but I think in a way it's an insult to people's intelligence. Let me read it. I don't always want to have someone talking about it. I
Yep.
want to read it and analyze and process it for myself. I think that's one thing that gets me frustrated. Um, but the other thing too, I think it's surprising just league wide about how many lopsided matches there were.
Yep.
And I don't know what can be done about that, if anything. But you just hope that there can be some more competitive matches on the cards for next year. I do think that one of the things that has surprised me is I've become a big fan of the gather round. I kind of like the gather round. I think it's a really kind of cool thing, this festival of football where there is one city that is outside of Melbourne that really can reap the benefits of having some matches played there. Here's something I would love to see. In the spirit of corroboree, to borrow an indigenous term, I'd love to see the gather round in the Northern Territory. Wouldn't that be cool?
That'd be fun. Yep. No,
Wouldn't that be cool?
I think it'd be fantastic. I think it'd be fantastic. The biggest question would be is when about I know that with the opening round they were trying to get the northern states, and again I think they're gonna expand on that a little bit and change it again. I threw up the idea of instead of opening round being just the northern just the northern states. I think you should get every single team, but I think you should get a game in each of the states, a game in Queensland, a game in New South Wales, a game in Victoria, a game in South Australia, and a game in Western Australia. And just if you want to make make the two games up in the northern states your Friday night and your Saturday night, so you give them the prime time games for that particular market, which you're still kind of fighting with rugby league, but then you've got the other games situated in all of them. So I kind of agree with the ones it's like, don't just make it like 8 teams and everybody else and then just throws off all the buys. Just make it round one and just make it interesting to where it's like there's only one game in Victoria and then all the rest of the games are in the other states. And figure it out. I think you could figure out a way to do that on how it goes. So no, I'm 100% with you on that. Again, there was so many surprises on that. So I want to have some fun here. So many games, 24 rounds, and then all of the finals. What was your game of the year? What's the one game that you're going to go back during our long winter months and you're going to potentially watch to get you through January and February before we restart next season in 2026?
Wow. Well, if you're talking about that one, um, as a supporter, I would have to go to Fremantle's victory, the 1 point win over Collingwood.
Mhm.
That definitely would be mine as a supporter. Um, then as a neutral, that would be a little tough. And again, I keep harping on this because of so many one-sided matches. But there were some close ones this year. I think maybe the first the Adelaide Melbourne match that happened in July might be one of them. Let me just see. The other thing too, I could think of. Again, it's tough. And before
Mhm.
before we came on, I did some scrolling through of the fixture because it was hard for me to really figure out one particular match because again, I come back to this. There were so many lopsided
Lopsided
matches.
matches. Yep.
I'm thinking there was a 1 point match that Collingwood won over Melbourne. And if you'll forgive me, I'm scrolling through from memory or so I won't have to depend on memory.
Well, I will. How about I let you scroll and I will tell you mine because I have
Okay,
the exact one, and maybe it's just because it's one that sticks out because I caught the final quarter of this, and still to this day cannot believe that I saw what I saw, and that is
okay.
round 20, St. Kilda versus Melbourne, Marvel
I was gonna
Stadium,
I was gonna
as
actually
Nasai,
reference
yep,
that one
yep,
too. Yeah.
Nasai Wanganeen-Miller goes absolutely bonkers in the last 6 minutes, has what could have been a mark of the year mark, kicks the goal, ties the game. There's 13 seconds left. All heck breaks loose because of a 666 violation. And the intelligence of Nasai Wanganeen-Miller to tell, oh my gosh, holy the Rowan Marshall, the Rock, hey, send everybody to the right. Send everybody to the right. I'm going to go left. I'm going to be open. Kick it to me. We're going to get a chance to win this game after the siren. And just this was an incredible game of football because again, Melbourne pretty much had this one going into the fourth quarter. St. Kilda just absolutely went balls to the wall, found a way to get it done. Incredible game. Like I said, Brownlow night got interesting considering Jack Viney got the 3 votes. And again, the entire room lost itself when Messiah got the 2 votes because they were like, really? And then Jack got the 3. And you can tell everybody was kind of like, what? So this was a game I'm gonna go back and watch it over the off season because I kind of have to watch the entire game again because I watched most of the fourth quarter. I happened to be up that day, so I didn't fall asleep. And I think Sydney had played just a little bit earlier and or something. I can't remember why but I was up for this particular ending, and I sat there after the game was over and just went, "What did I just see?" Like I could not believe how from the clouds St. Kilda came back to win this game. Just an incredible game of football. And the ice in Nasai Wanganeen-Miller is because all he needed was a point. He didn't even need to kick a goal to win the game. All he needed was 1 point. And he absolutely gun barrel straights it right down the middle, gets the win 96-90. And there's no way you can't tell me there weren't a few extra dollars thrown onto his contract after this one. I agree. One of the announcers said it. Name your price, son. Name your price.
That's a great one. But you bring up another issue, which is the whole thing about sports betting and how pervasive it has become in sports worldwide. And I just am thinking, and I tease my Aussie friends a lot about this because I just say, hey, you guys will bet on anything.
Pretty
Um,
much.
yeah, I mean, but I really wonder too. It really has me concerned about the influence, the sports books, and
Hmm.
all of that other stuff. We're seeing some of that in Major League Baseball now, where players are being investigated and put on administrative leave, which is really starting to affect teams and all that kind of other thing. The AFL is going to have to address that. It really, really is. Because that could be seriously problematic. I mean, I would really hate it if it comes down to a finals match or, God forbid, the grand final, and you've got one or two players, key players, or something like that, who are too hooked in to sports betting and get up to some impropriety. You would hate to see something like that,
Yep. Nope,
and I think that's
100.
got to be dealt with.
Yep. Nope. 100% with you on that. So, all right, Gil, I want to have some fun. I want you to pull out your crystal ball. What are you looking forward to in 2026 for the AFL men's comp?
Wow. That is a great question. With my purple hat, I'm looking forward to seeing more Murphy Reed.
Mhm.
He was, to me, the best surprise that Fremantle had this year. I really have rarely seen a kid come in the league, a 19-year-old with a 35-year-old footy brain, and do some of the things that he did. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing absolutely more of that. As much as it's upsetting to me to have so much player movement going to benefit the teams that were most successful, I have to admit it's going to be interesting to see players with their new teams and how they're gonna get along. Um, I think the one thing I'm not looking forward to, I like the center bounce. To me, it's disappointing to do away with it. If it worked for over 100 years, then maybe what's needed is better coaching of the umpires and not to scrap it entirely. Because if there's a
Mhm.
skill that's hard to get down and master, well, the thing to do isn't to abandon it. The thing to do is to teach it better
Mhm.
and to get it right. Um, so how you can't even say what time is bounce anymore. You can't even say that, Donnie. You can't say that next year. When
Nope.
is bounce down? Is the show bounce that I love? Is that going to have to change its name now to the toss up? you know, so I think the one thing that I would really love to see and makes me look forward to footy every year is how it is singularly unique in the world of sports. I want to see some traditions being held up and honored, and not this Americanization of the game that we love. One of the reasons I love it so much is that it's not American, it's not North American, it's not European. It is uniquely Australian. Um, the other thing that I will say, and I know this is kind of going in the opposite direction of things the things that I'm not looking forward to. I don't. Do I really need to know who won my club's time trials? Or who's training the house down? I have a very good friend of mine who just, as a matter of fact, arrived in the United States. So Lee Marcone, if you're listening to this, hey, shout out, welcome back to the U.S. But he has this great wisdom about a lot of things in footy, and here's something that I really love. It's like I don't want to bloody know who ran the fastest 2K time trial. Can he hit a target? Can he lace somebody out inside 50? That's the thing I want to know about. I don't care who wins the time trial. I don't care who's training the house down, so to speak. I've seen how many times have we seen somebody train the house down in the preseason and then they get out there and they suck during the regular season, right? So, you know, um, I really want to see more tradition, and I want to see the teams who are on the bottom who are really struggling. I want to see a more even competition, where you don't have such a gap in the number of wins between the teams in the 8 and the teams who didn't make it from the 10 who are on the outside looking in. So I think, and that all goes back also to lopsided matches. So what I really want to see, Donnie, I want to see more competitive balance, and I want to see more competitive games next year.
Yep. No, I'm 100% with you. I'm interested for me. I'm fascinated to see next year how does the fifth bench player with the sub being going bye-bye, does it bring back the two ruck system? Because I know several teams didn't like to do it. They would go with one ruck and then use kind of a forward hybrid for it. So will we see teams start to employ the double ruck with five on the bench? And I also will look at it is that over this off season, do we see the AFL overreact to the fact that Tom Stewart didn't play in the grand final because of a concussion? Will we see them overreact and put in that bye week in between the preliminary finals and the grand final? A lot like the Super Bowl over here. I've also come up with this idea, and I don't think many proponents disagree with it, but I said, in 2 years, you're probably going to see the concussion protocol go past 12 days. So they're going to make I have a feeling they're going to overreact and they're going to make this change. They're going to get rid of the pre-finals bye, which I think is just going to bugger up more because it's actually going to make teams like the Western Bulldogs from 2016, the Brisbane Lions from last year, is that teams that got healthy come the time for the finals because of that bye week. Now they're not going to be able to get as healthy. So it's going to really, again, I find it funny how many people in the Victorian media blew a gasket because, well, another top four side went out in straight sets. That's the way life is. Like literally the home and away season, everybody's like, well, we got to give more proponents to the home and away season. No, we don't. The home and away season, basically all it is playing for seeding. That is it. Okay. This isn't European soccer. This isn't the English Premier League where you win a premiership because you won the entire regular season. That's not the way this is. Literally, the home and away season, all it is prepping your seed for finals. That is it. The season really is when you make finals. This is when you prove whether you're a premiership side or not. Can you do it in finals? I am tired of this complaining from so many people that are like, well, it's a travesty when we see final to four seeds not getting to the preliminary finals. No, it's good. It brings more intrigue because it means that as much as the home and away season is fantastic, it is different come finals time. And sometimes teams get hot come finals time. We see it all the time over here in American sports. And I apologize to the Australians that are listening to this. Tom, what are you talking about? Because American sports, what you notice is that sometimes an eight seed, one of the worst teams to make the finals, can catch fire at just the right time and damn near win a title. Edmonton Oilers in the NHL almost did it one year where they went from the eight seed, the last possible team in their conference. They got to the Stanley Cup finals and came one game away from winning the whole darn thing. I will tell you this now. Those are the finals I absolutely cannot not watch because when you get an upset, it's a lot like March Madness over here too. Upsets draw eyeballs because people want to see a Cinderella do something they're not supposed to. So that's why when they constantly are whining that a top four side doesn't win the premiership, I'm going, I like it. I think it's fantastic because it means 5 through 8, you're not just making up the numbers. They're there to potentially win a premiership. So for me, I cannot wait to see the five bench players. Cannot wait. And I'm sitting here in the off season. I'm waiting for Greg Swan to say that we're going to go to the Super Bowl. We're going to go to Super Bowl style, and that bye week is going to be the week before the grand final, which I understand because they want to get the Brownlow and the All Australian, all that stuff kind of in that week before, kind of a preparatory. But it's such an anticlimactic because you come down from the preliminary final, and now you got to wait 2 weeks before you get a championship game.
I don't know,
That's
Donnie. I mean, I love the pre-finals bye because then no team
I
has an
do I
excuse
do
because
too. I
yeah,
I
because
prefer that
you can
personally
you've got a week for your injured players, another week of healing. No one can come in
to
to
get
the
ready for
finals
the
and say,
finals. Yes.
yeah, no, and nobody can say coming into the finals, well, we played all these games straight and we traveled and all this. No, everybody gets that. See, to me, that's equity. The other thing that I think about the sub rule is why not the best of both worlds? Because we've had it called the tactical sub for the last couple of years.
Hmm.
So here's my idea. Why not a situation in which you can choose at any time to put on anybody who's also on your emergency list? What would be the harm in that? Because then you have someone who is a tactical sub coming on at a certain time. And if you keep the rotations the same, I would not have a problem with that. Why not even have a 28 person bench? Why not have something like that where you have or actually 26, you have your 22 and you have your four emergencies, right? Would it really disrupt the game that much that you could bring any one of those four players on at any time and it doesn't have to be a permanent substitution?
Hmm. Nope. Almost almost a little bit like a concussion sub, or why you had the HIA so the team doesn't have to be down one. Like I like it, but like I said, the biggest issue that I have is that everybody's like, well, we got to make sure that nobody misses the grand final due to concussion. I said, okay, well,
How are you going to
now,
do that?
well, no. Now the issue that you run into is that okay? So if we take away, like they said, they want that buy in between the preliminary final and the grand final. Okay, then what happens to the player that gets concussed in round 24 that now can't play in a qualifying or an elimination final? You're not solving a problem. You're adding a new problem. Plus, the reason that pre-finals buy was put in there is because people were taking round 24 off if they knew they were going to be in the finals or weren't going to adjust where they
Yeah.
were going to be. Ross Lyon for a Fremantle game one time sat 15 of his starters.
2013. 2013
So
was a game I remember that very well. It was a
the
game against the
intrigue,
Saints, and it inspired that rule about the pre-finals bye because he rested a whole bunch of
yep,
players. And yes, it the whole thing is it's very interesting about that. I
yep,
remember that very well. If Fremantle had won that match, then Fremantle wouldn't have played Geelong in the qualifying final and would not have achieved one of the most famous wins in club history if
yep,
that happened. But here's something else about when you're talking about the Premiership medals and being a Star Wars fan. I will say that I don't like the AFL's Chewbacca treatment of some of its players at the grand final. Now, for those of you who haven't seen Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope, why is it that Luke Skywalker and Han Solo get medals, but Chewbacca doesn't get a medal? Chewbacca was the MVP. He co-piloted the Millennium Falcon that fired the shot that freed Luke Skywalker to blow up the damn Death Star. Now, I know you're waiting for the parallel. How is it that somebody playing on the Premiership winning team who helped get their team there is not allowed to get a medal just because they didn't play in the damn grand final?
on the
Give them the
day. Yep.
medal. Give them
I've,
the medal. It's like that's unheard of over here.
yep,
It's like it's
yep,
it's like if
yep,
you have a baseball
yep.
team and you have a pitcher that won 20 games, or if you had a hitter that hit 40 home runs and they got injured and they can't play in the World Series, they still get a World Series ring.
Yep.
So how can you deny people that arguably have helped get their team in the position to be in the grand final
Yep.
and win it? No one should have to miss out on that. And
I
no, I'm sorry,
100% agree.
and I get
Yep.
really hot about this because I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me for someone who has contributed so much in one of the toughest sports on earth,
Hmm.
Australian rules football. People are going to get injured. It's inevitable.
Yep.
How few players are going to make it through now 24 matches? And because they didn't play in the match due to an injury, they don't get to share
We're
in the
getting dropped.
rewards for
Yep.
everybody else.
Yep.
Come on.
I've made this argument to a lot of people because and I don't know how much you pay attention to the NHL, but for the NHL when it comes to the name on the Stanley Cup, which is part of winning their championship, you have to have a certain amount of games that you've played or play at least one game in the final. So I think to kind of balance it out, I think you could make a rule. I'm 100% with you because I've challenged some people that are like, well, no, you're only a Premiership player if you play on the day. I said, okay, can you tell me something? With a 24 game season, can you get through the entire year only playing 23 players? Have you had a team win a Premiership with only the 23 players that they played with from round one? Could they do it? Because I'm going to sit here and tell you this right now. This is not a spoiler. This is reality. No, there is not a single team this season in the AFL that only played 23 players.
Right.
Every single team played 24 or more, which means there is a player that played in a game that would not have played in the grand final. I understand it's tradition, okay? But this is one tradition for me personally. I think it really does punish
Mm-hmm.
something that's out of control for these players. Oscar McInerney last year should have got
Yeah.
a medal because they're in the grand final because of him.
Yeah.
Darcy Fort played really well grand final day, but Darcy Fort wasn't the reason they got there. Darcy Fort was the recipient of them getting there. Yes, I understand. You got to win on the day, but here's the reality check. Many Australians don't like to when I tell them this. You didn't get there on one game. You got there on your entire home and away and all
Mm-hmm.
of your finals. Personally, I think if somebody plays like 8 games in the home and away season or one game in any of the finals, qualifying, a limb, doesn't matter, prelim, semi, grand. If you play in any of those games, you should get a premiership medal if your
Yep.
team wins a premiership because you are part of a premiership team. It
Oh, I'm
is
with
not
you.
just the team in the day. I'm with you. I will soapbox and literally explain to you how every single other sport in the world, even the guys that do not play soccer teams, when they win a premiership, even the players that never get on the pitch, they get a medal.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I guess the question is if someone in Australia says, what do you want, a medal? The answer is yes.
Yep. And again, I understand their argument. Okay, it's the way it's always been, and I understand that. But lists are changing. The demands on these young men's bodies is changing. I think you could change the rules because this is a premiership group, and I know that they're talking like, well, why don't we get them American style rings? Well, that's great, but that's not the same as a premiership medal, which again, many of these players, some teams have played up to 30 guys. Why don't there, it's a team accomplishment. It's not an individual accomplishment. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I get heated when I have discussions with people that are absolutely, they do not, they're stuck. I give them plausible reasons why. I'm not saying that they're wrong. I'm just saying I'm giving you plenty of plausible reasons why how you are approaching this doesn't make sense, because what you're saying basically is only 23 guys win a premiership. No, because you don't get, it's not just one game. You don't just play
Yeah.
one game and win a premiership. It's the entire home and away plus all of the other finals. So it's not one game. Yes, it takes one game to win the premiership, but it takes all the others to get to have that opportunity
And then I
for
hope I
winning.
can speak okay for you and me on this. If for those listening in Australia, this isn't our perspective is not an American perspective. Our perspective on this issue is a human issue.
Exactly.
If you do the work and you help get your team in that position, yeah, you deserve a medal.
Yep. I 100% agree with you on that, sir. Well, Gil, that is it. That is this AFL season wrapped up with a bow, put, like I said, put underneath the proverbial Christmas tree for this particular season. It has been fantastic. As per usual, Gil, you and I could talk for hours when it comes to football. We are both two passionate Americans who love this sport so much. As per usual, Gil, thank you so much for hopping on the podcast. Another incredible chat talking footy with you.
Hey, my pleasure, mate. Let's hope both our clubs make the finals next year. That'd be kind of nice, wouldn't it?
It would be fantastic. I know both of our clubs will probably go into this off season looking to bolster a little bit. I cannot wait. I'm with you. I'm trying to keep as much trade radio while also trying to be as dedicated to the AFLW. Everybody knows, huge W fan here, enjoying this season. It's been topsy-turvy. It's been fantastic. Unfortunately, I think I already know who the premier is going to be unless something drastically crazy happens. But again, it's another fun season. So ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this end of the year for the AFL game season review for the Donnie's Disposals podcast. Again, if you like what you were listening to, if you like the way this old American likes to chat his footy, please like and subscribe. And we will be back with more footy coverage very, very soon.